Jay, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into anything too deep, I'm going to start with some quick fire questions, if that's okay. So just fire off the first thing that comes into mind. What's the biggest fitness myth you wish men would stop believing?
That you need to train at the gym for an hour to get in shape.
What's your go-to comfort food?
They're called fizzers. They are licorice on the outside, sugar on the inside, and I've yet to open a packet without demolishing them completely, which is why they're not in my house.
Fizzy cola bottles?
Yeah, pretty good. The sour cherry ones, though, definitely.
That's so good. If you could only do one exercise for the rest of your life, what would you pick?
Push-ups.
Oh, why?
I love a push-up. Who doesn't love a push-up? It's one of the most versatile, easiest, beneficial exercises to do.
Super Nintendo or Mega Drive?
Mega Drive.
Why?
3 reasons. Golden Axe 2.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat and Sonic.
Sonic. Yeah. Okay, fine. Worst habit or vice?
Not picking my clothes up off the floor. I have what's known as a floor drobe. So although it looks messy, I know exactly where everything is.
What's the worst advice you've ever heard given to men over 40?
Go hard or go home.
Why?
Because go hard equates to being tired and ruining your next day. There is a different strategy that's required at 40, of which I'm just hit 40 this year and learning very quickly. I
saw that you'd found these notes about kids' views of men who hit 40 and their opinions of what it's like. What were your thoughts on this?
Brilliant.
Why?
Because I thought exactly the same. So I believe, from what I can remember, there was a group of children that were asked what it's like to be 40, and they'd written down things like, I am old, my back hurts, and to the extremes of I'm going to die soon. And I think as a young child, from what I can remember, your concept of age is very flawed. You don't look at ever being that old. You just look at yourself. Even now, I don't feel 40, and I speak to 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, and think I don't feel my age. So you just don't have a concept of what you're going to feel like at that age, because I don't think you've stopped to reflect on that as an 8-year-old. That's why I find it so fascinating, because I never thought that I'd be feeling like this at 40. And then I have 60-year-olds come to me and say, oh, you're so young. And I know in 20 years' time, I'm going to be saying exactly the same to 40-year-olds.
Why do you think it's unhealthy for men over 40 to have that mindset of I'm old or I'm getting older?
I think it just limits you, because what you believe in your head tends to become true. And also you search things that kind of solidify your thoughts. And also I think one of the biggest things is change is exhausting, and it involves a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of anxiety and stress. And I think as you get older, at least that I've found and people that I've spoken to, you just want less drama and things in your life. And this can be a real benefit to you if you've been doing the right things, such as maintaining a healthy routine, a healthy diet of food, friends and family. But if you haven't got that, it's even more difficult as you get older to create those new habits and routines.
So it's more that you've got more physiological resistance at 20, so you can go away with it.
Yeah, I think you're more stubborn and naive at 20.
Yeah.
So you take more risks. You don't exactly know what you're doing. And actually, I'm where I am today from my stupid ego, naivety and stubbornness. And sometimes I wish I had some more of that in me, because a lot of guys that I speak to, they are the brightest, the most knowledgeable and most experienced that they've ever felt in their life. And yet they did a lot more 20 years ago when they had half that knowledge, wisdom and experience.
So how do you start changing the habits or instill discipline into your average 40-year-old now?
I think one of the most important things is that you have to challenge yourself, because one of the things I always say is that a lot of guys wait to become motivated to do things. And this is why if you search on YouTube motivation, there's millions of all these G-up things, but motivation's more of it's not something that's reliable. And one of the things that I'm always saying is motivation is doing things when you feel like doing it, and discipline is doing things regardless of how you feel. And when you're doing new habits, be it getting up early, exercising, you're not going to feel great straight away doing it. You know, a lot of things that are beneficial for you, like stretching, breath work, mindfulness, meditation, you feel like an idiot doing it for the first 7 days because you don't actually feel what it does. And this is why you have to challenge yourself to make a commitment to doing something that you don't really want to do, but you know it's good for you for 30 days. Because at least then you start to see some progress there. It's not going to be, well, you know, life-changing. I mean, if you do breath work for 30 days, you're going to notice a difference. It's not going to change your world, but it's the compound effect of doing it over time that makes the difference. I've been stretching every day for 5 years, and if someone says to me, oh, do you feel better for it? I still wake up with aches and pains, but I haven't injured myself in the gym in 5 years. I know correlation doesn't always imply causation, but it's the compound effect of actually moving, and that's had a massive effect. And especially with stretching, it's not just about, you know, loosening up your body. It's that 25 minutes to be in your head, to just release the body from stress. It's all of these things. And I think one of the biggest things with most 40-year-olds that I speak to is they know all of this. And something I always say, you know, I'd written a book, Hard Stuff, Easy Life, and it's if you do hard things, you'll have an easy life. But easy things are hard to do. You know, just stretching every day. Everyone knows that they, you know, probably need to do it, but they don't because it's so easy to do. The reason I say push-ups, because someone will say to me, I haven't exercised in a week. I'm like, give me 5 push-ups. I'm like, how long does that take? 5 seconds. How long did that take for you to decide to do that? And it's just we're overcomplicating movement and exercise.
So if I'm your, I'm not, but if I am, in theory, your average 40-year-old something guy who's not exercising, not doing anything, how would you start to get them motivated?
I wouldn't get them motivated. I'd chuck that word motivation out of their head. What I would get them to start thinking about is having a purpose for why they want to do stuff. And I'll give you a good example. My purpose now is I take the family down to North Devon every year. We go surfing, and it's just my nice little relaxing place for a long weekend. And my aim is to be 70 years of age, hopefully have grandkids, take 2 surfboards down there, walk the kilometre down the beach, 2 hours surfing, and drag those boards back. Now, when I picture myself doing that, I then ask myself the question, what do I need to do each day to stack the decks in my favour for that to happen? So when I speak to a lot of 40-year-olds, a lot of the ones that I speak to have kids. And I get them to start thinking, okay, how old's your child now? And I say, I want you to imagine, okay, he's 6. You know, my son Archer's 6. What do you want to do when you're 16? When he's 16, where can you see yourself being at 16? Okay, let's fast forward 26. I'm going to be 60. He's going to be 26. I mean, what it's like to be 26. You know, I'd love to, one thing for me, I'd love to do a Tough Mudder with him and absolutely destroy him on the Tough Mudder.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, a 60-year-old man telling his 26-year-old son to keep up. And I think these kind of things give you this kind of purpose, but it's also this kind of mental model that you can fall back on to go, look, I don't really want to do this, but I really want to do that Tough Mudder with my boy for his 26th birthday, whether he likes it or not. So I'm going to get up and fucking do it. So these kind of mental models I get a lot of my guys to do, and they fire me up. You know, you talk about motivation, that motivates me to do the things that I don't want to do.
Blood test. So this is quite an important thing for you, isn't it? Yeah,
very much so. I tell you what, like this year was the first year that I'd had a blood test. It's something that I always wanted to do and frequently do, but it's this kind of thing of the only reason that I had it was because I turned 40, and normally I think most people, including myself, would only get one if I felt that there was something wrong, and I've never had something wrong.
Yeah.
So I didn't think I'd need it, but I was always interested in my testosterone levels because so many people, as soon as they hit 40, that's all they talk about. So I was like, interesting.
So I'll explain for those who don't know SHBG is. I'm sure this is obvious for you, but sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG, is basically just a protein and it sticks to testosterone and it effectively blocks its use. So in a fit and healthy active individual, you've only got about 3% usable testosterone, and that's the available, supposed to be testosterone. The rest of it's all bound to things like SHBG or albumin produced in your liver, and there's a few other proteins as well. But the point is that you don't really have a lot of usable testosterone flowing around, and there's lots of reasons why we think that's the case. Part of it is like an evolutionary buffer system to make sure we don't have too much testosterone. Just as a bit of a regulator. It can interact with other hormones like cortisol or body weight or lots of other things, which is all fine. But the mistake I think we do make a lot in conventional medicine is we rely just on the total. And depending on who you speak to, there is a lot of suggestion that free testosterone correlates very well with other symptoms relating to testosterone deficiencies or excess. So ideally, you just want both because there's no difficulty in getting both back. So why aren't we testing for more things? And that's what we tend to do. I found your bloods were quite annoying in that sense, in that there wasn't really anything I could really shout at you about.
Oh, that's a shame.
Your testosterone is annoyingly healthy, which is not surprising, really. And a normal fit and healthy individual should have something between 15 and 13 nanomoles per litre. If you look at the NHS reference range, they'll often say something like 6 to 25 nanomoles is the normal range, but that's just effectively outdated information. And the British Endocrine Society, British Society of Sexual Medicine, who write sort of the guidance for these sort of things, we've kind of moved on since that data was originally produced. And again, this is not designed to be having a go at the NHS because I appreciate that is not their priority, but we'd hope that eventually that reference range will start to catch up. And yours is 23 nanomoles per litre. So that's a great testosterone. And I'd be very happy if I was 20 and had that level. And I'd be very happy if at 46, 47 soon, I have that level. So that's really good. And then, of course, we then look at your SHBG because that's going to stick about 66% of it to your testosterone, and your levels come back at 53. So a normal, again, for this is somewhere between 17 and 65-ish, and yours are certainly at the higher end. And of course, that means you're pushing your available testosterone to get squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. So you don't technically have low testosterone or low free testosterone, but you'd have a lower free testosterone than one might expect based on how physically active and healthy you are. But maybe then the question is this a consequence of what you do, or were you always like this and we just don't know? What was your number before?
If I've got my phone, I'll be able to tell you, but it just said...
High.
Yeah, I think so. Like anything, when I see everything green and everything's orange, I'm like, what's that?
Well, I guess that's the mistake, is that when we give patients blood tests and we see a range, you always want to know, am I in that range? And does that, and is higher better or lower? And it doesn't always work like that. SHBG, again, is really interesting because ideally, if we were going to give you as much testosterone as you could, because you're getting loads of sleep and you're eating healthy and you're training hard, you'd have a pretty low SHBG because you've got this available testosterone and you're training really hard and you're really healthy. But we don't see that. And we see actually the SHBG is high. So either this has always been you and you're having to sort of compensate and train a bit harder to get away with that, or actually this is a consequence of you being so healthy. So maybe if your body fat is really low, you're pushing your SHBG up a little bit because your body's going, you know what, you're a little bit too ripped. And I could eat a little bit more fat just in case we get a bad winter and I don't know where my next meal is coming from.
Yeah, I haven't had high body fat since 2013, so
it's not a bad thing for you. And I think if you feel well and it has no impact on your day-to-day living, then who cares? It doesn't mean anything. And you should never treat the number, you treat your patient. But if you were coming in saying, my God, I feel awful, I've got no libido and I've got erection problems and I'm getting all, I don't know, tired all the time and I can't sleep properly, then you say, well, maybe it's because your SHBG is higher. Most of the time, we do see high SHBG in patients who are higher end athletes. You know, I'm not trying to give you any form of compliment, but those patients with higher end athleticism will train very hard and they have a much higher muscle to fat ratio, have higher SHBGs. And it probably is a slight change in that evolutionary state because I guess ideally you do want a layer of fat because we don't know when your next meal's coming. I don't know when you're going to have to fight that mammoth or saber-toothed tiger to get your meal in. So you're trying to conserve it all the time. And then you want little bursts of testosterone when we think you're going to have to procreate, socialize in the tribe, or kill the leader so you become the boss of the tribe. Generalizing.
Yeah.
You did have marginally high homocysteine levels, if you're familiar with homocysteine.
I have no idea. Please
So
educate me.
homocysteine is an amino acid that you produce. And at really high levels, we actually test for it in babies when we do the little heel prick Guthrie test. And you can have a genetic condition that makes it really high, and that can cause a lot of problems. And it's a developmental issue with children, etc. But that's not what we mean. For adults, high homocysteine level increases your risk of cardiovascular disease. So if you had high homocysteine and then you said, oh, and I'm not training and I'm smoking and I'm overweight, then we'd take that as a much bigger risk factor. Again, which is why you're a bit more annoying, is that because the rest of your bloods are so good, you can kind of take that, well, he's a guy that if he wasn't doing anything, we'd put you at higher risk. But because all those other factors are so well controlled, and like your cholesterol is really good and your markers of diabetes and pre-diabetes is really good. So we've got nothing that we need to nag you about. But having those indicators in the back of your mind, for some patients, they use them as almost little trigger points, little nags to say, actually, you know what, I can't just sit around because I've got that thing that if I leave this, something bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I find that quite useful. In terms of SHBG, there are only two ways you can monitor it. You can't take a tablet to reduce it. There is no medicine that reduces SHBG. Some people have talked about boron. You can just buy this stuff from health food shops, but the evidence is awful for this, and it doesn't really work. I think, like you said, you either find the lifestyle cause that's doing it, but you only need to do that if you have a problem with it. And if you're well, and like in your case, you don't, then honestly, I don't care. It doesn't mean anything. The conversation around testosterone is very similar in that sense, because there's a different discussion around should you treat the number of the patient, but you mentioned that you've seen lots of guys with low testosterone. How did they come to you?
Well, it's always a difficult one because let's kind of discuss TRT. I'm very kind of anti it in the fact that I have a bias behind the fact that I've always felt good, this, that, and the other. But also I know what can be achieved with lifestyle changes, and a high percent of people don't actually kind of need it if they can do those lifestyle changes. I think the argument's always, well, and this is where I've had a discussion with people, is going, well, what is as much as 80% of people can improve it with lifestyle choices, what's the percentage of that guy being able to do it through lifestyle changes? And I think that's where it's a case-by-case basis where you've got to weigh it up. Which, once again, that's not the TikTok, Instagram thing. It needs to be
more revolutionary.
It's a yes or a no, and it's just like everything in life it depends, unfortunately. So for me, I'm just fascinated because a lot of, I had a compressed L. I know we're kind of going on a tangent, but we'll come back here to it. But I had a compressed L4, L5 in my spine this year, and it came from silently whispering for a year and then violently screaming at me that there is a problem. And I allocated an hour a day to focus on it, proper stretching, everything that, a person would give you to do. And a lot of people fed back to me and said, oh, I've had it for a couple of years. And I'm like, oh, mine's gone after 4 months. And they're like, oh. And I said, have you been doing the work? Yeah. And I said, have you? Have you been doing the 30 to 45 minutes a day of what it is you're doing? And it's the same with people saying, have you done the same lifestyle changes that you need to increase your testosterone? Yeah, I eat healthy. Yeah, I exercise. It's like exercising once every 2 weeks is an exercise. Eating healthy, but then smashing 6 pints of Guinness and KFC on the weekend isn't healthy. It's just people's view of what actually is a lifestyle change is very different to what they believe in their head. And I think it's really difficult, because it is difficult when it comes to habits and lifestyle changes, because it's a massive, massive thing, which is going to take a very, very long time. And once again, that's where that argument comes in, of going, well, is that person capable of making those changes? In an ideal situation, yeah, 100%. It gives me great joy that somebody's dedicated 8 months, 9 months of their life, and then they get another blood test and it's elevated. But how many of those people have tried that 8 to 9 months and in their head gone, I'm doing everything, when in actual fact they're not? And then once again, a case by case basis. But as a person who's like, you don't need TRT, this, that, and the other, you know, I understand that it could potentially be an option for somebody.
That was a beautifully politically phrased
And
answer.
and it is, because I am, I say I'm anti TRT, but I'm very pro lifestyle changes, and know that I deep down in my soul that I want guys to get healthier, get happier, get fitter, get stronger through doing the work and action.
Yeah.
And I will still be a massive advocate for that.
I think having listened to your TRT podcast, I was like, I'm going to gear up for this. And then when he kicks off about it, I was like, right, I'm going to revise all these studies. Exactly. But actually, yeah, I actually agree completely with you, which is exactly what we try and do. And the most difficult patients I think we see are the ones who have borderline low testosterone, but have done nothing about it. And they don't want, I think they see TRT as the quick fix answer. And I don't get me wrong, if you've got somebody with a true low testosterone, so supposing you said to like a menopausal woman, well, if you just did some exercise and ate better, maybe had some more sex, your estrogen would be fine. First I'd get struck off, but also probably I'd get my head kicked in. So you'd never dream of saying that, but we do say that to men because the presumption is that, well, you can just lifestyle your way out of it. And that's true for a percentage of guys. And you're exactly right. It's the skill from our side is trying to work out which are the ones that genuinely need this stuff and which are the ones we should be kicking your way to say, actually, you just need to do more. There is a percentage of men who, with testosterone deficiency, will get depressed or low energy or low muscle mass, increased fat, whatever. And they will find it extremely hard to be motivated to go to the gym. And what we find in the NHS a lot is they will go see an endocrinologist who will say, just go exercise, you'll lose the weight, you'll be fine. These guys end up with us because they can't. They're like, well, if it was that easy, I would have done that. And the argument of just go do it doesn't work. And I think it's around this, about 5% of our patients will start TRT and be able to use that as a mechanism to change their thought process enough that they feel motivated enough, and then they come off it because they've been able to sort of fix their process to get around to that point. Not everyone does, and I appreciate that's impossible, but the fact it can be really hard for guys who feel so low. It's like if you said to somebody depressed, well, just try and be happier, and you can't do that.
Yeah.
So I understand the point, but I think also we have to remember that, like, you're right, everyone is so different.
So you do have a lot of people who go on and then come off, because I think I was
not a lot.
Okay,
there are a couple. These are the ones that you can see there is something you could do to them, and we initially found that if you just said to them, well, look, we'll link you up with a training program or a psychologist, or get you to see a nutritionist or something, they kind of go, oh, it's not that. It's like they know they're overweight, but that's not their thing that's brought them in. It's because of the symptoms that brings them in. And if you can use testosterone to help them change their lifestyle, then their body does it themselves, and suddenly they don't need us anymore. And I agree that's rare. And that shouldn't be the main reason you're treating people, but the end point is still the same. So I think we can still use it in that sense. So you don't drink, do you?
I've given up alcohol this year.
We'll get back to Jay in one sec. Man Alive is a new show, and we have a huge amount of great celebrities and experts coming on to share with us both personal experiences and expert advice around men's health, as well as diving into real blood tests of guests like Jay. Please press subscribe to ensure you don't miss any of them. And now, back to Jay. Why?
It's no longer serving me. Now, I haven't really spoken too much about alcohol. One of the things that really bugs me is the fact that people quit alcohol and then they suddenly put it in their Instagram bio and they're all about it. And I think that there's issues with that, because I think a lot of people who give up alcohol, they have to create an enemy with it in order to not have it. So it's this kind of when you have a relationship, it's easier to hate the opposite person than it is to accept that you have flaws with things and, you know, you could have done things better too. And personally, I just don't think it's something that I can moderate. And for many, many years, I've always said, especially when it comes to food and nutrition, if you can't reduce something down, then it needs to be removed completely. Now, I've spent since probably the age of 15 drinking alcohol. Everything that I've ever achieved in my life has had alcohol in. I've got plenty of feedback positive from alcohol, but also I've got lots of negative things. We just forget all the negative things.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that really changed my mind was last year. I have on my Apple Watch, which says overload at the moment, but it's this app called Stress Watch, and all it does is monitor my heart rate variability. And it was for 8 weeks I gave up alcohol, and it was really high. It was great. And then as soon as I started drinking at Christmas, every 6 minutes it was buzzing, saying overload. Whatever you're doing, basically stop doing. And I was waking up with anxiety and that, and I was just like, there's just one common denominator here, and it's alcohol.
But you knew that without the watch, didn't you?
Yeah,
like
100%.
In your head.
But then, yeah, 100%. But I think what's the interesting thing is that I actually did a piece of content, and every year since the age of 30, I've written 30 things at 30. It started with, that went viral, and I went 31 things at 31, 32 things at 32.
It's going to get harder, isn't it?
It is going to be harder. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I think it's going to be 4 things at 41 next year. But my 38 things at 38 was, I'm not going to give up alcohol. I love it too much. People have got to have vices, and, you know, not everything needs to be perfect. And there is an argument for that. My argument was always, I've achieved everything that I've done in my life. I've broken Guinness World Records. I've done all of these things, and I was drinking every weekend. Therefore, I don't need to give it up. And I actually listened to a podcast from Steve-O, of all people, who was on Jackass, and he said, it was easy for me to give up alcohol because I had a real problem with it, and I knew that it was being detrimental to my life. My friends who are still drinking don't have a problem with it, but they really, really do. And it's not so much of a problem that they need to stop. And I think this is one of these things that you have to ask yourself. It's like, okay, cool, it's not ruining my life, but it is causing a few, you know, feedback signals. Yeah. And I had a lot of justifications in my head which I had to overcome this year, such as, can I relax on the weekend without alcohol? Can I go out and have a good time without alcohol? Can I celebrate, you know, without alcohol? Can I go down to North Devon, my family, and not have that pint of cider that I have every year? And the answer is yes. And actually, one of the things I realized is it wasn't the alcohol that was making me feel good. It was the family, the friends, and the situations that I was doing.
And it's probably better for you not to.
And it's probably better for me, yeah.
I mean, I think we all know that. Everyone knows alcohol's bad for you. And there were there's journal studies used to come out that said, like, oh, a glass of red wine was good for you because it had antioxidants or some other bollocks. But basically, we know that's not true. I think there was that paper a year or two ago that said it was basically like a class C carcinogen. You know, it's really bad for you. And I do wonder, does our society's attitude towards alcohol mean that in like 20 years, when our kids are older, they'll look back at the way we do about smoking now and go, God, I can't believe you guys used to drink all the time.
Yeah.
It was really bad. But
I think stress coping mechanisms are a big thing. I think, you know, as much as there's a lot of studies and that which I've been reading about, you know, the younger generation drinking a lot less alcohol and doing stuff, but at the same time, their mental health's worse than ours.
Yeah.
Because although they're drinking less, they're going out less, they're spending less time with humans and connecting with others. Social media, we didn't have it. You know, I had Snake 2 on my phone. That was the most exciting thing back in the day. But, you know, you didn't...
It was a good game.
Yeah, it was.
So,
It's a good game. Really good game. But, you know, when you're meeting your friends, you had a time and a place and a location, and you'd be there. And you know, it's this kind of thing that, yeah, we used to drink a lot, but we had good... So, you know, I think health is multivariable.
Yeah.
So it's not just physical health, it's mental health, it's social health, it's all of these things that combine together. And actually this is, I remember writing something about this, that, you know, a marathon is not healthy for you, but actually working towards a lifetime achievement for something is very healthy for you. So actually that one marathon you do every year or every couple of years is probably overall, in the grander scheme of things, very, very healthy for you.
Yeah.
But we all know that alcohol is bad for you and you shouldn't drink any whatsoever. But that couple of glasses of wine with your friend who you haven't seen for ages, or that beer celebrate that you take your boy out for his 18th to have is bloody amazing. So it's the whole balance game, I think, with a lot of things. And with me, I knew it's not going to be a balance game. It's going to be an off balance game. And this is why I'm not very much anti kind of alcohol. I'm like, it depends, because there's context to every person.
So suicide rates are still greatest in men in their 40s. And that hasn't really changed in the last 10, 20 years. So why do you think it's so bad?
I think 40 is a time where your kids are very reliant on you financially. And of course, that has its own stress. I think financial stress is one of the highest stresses in guys over 40. At the same time, your parents, if they're still around, are getting older, so they're reliant on you as well. So it feels like you are looking after everyone at the cost of not looking after yourself. And I think sometimes when guys aren't doing a good job in their head at that, they feel like they're becoming a burden. And added to the fact that guys don't actually talk about these things, you know, something that I actually said is every guy needs to spend a couple of hours a week with a group of guys. But the trouble is, all these men's talk groups are in bloody churches and meeting rooms, and they're called men's talks groups. And I'm like, who the fuck wants to go to one of those? So it's finding ways around getting guys together to talk, and that, even if it's just a couple of minutes. But going, you know, sitting all in a circle, talking about your problems, sounds, even to me, it sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah.
We have something called the Cold Water Collective. Every Sunday at 8 a.m, we get a group of lads together, go and jump in the sea. You know, sometimes it's 10 minutes in the summer, sometimes it's just 2 when it goes through the winter. But the real thing about it is doing something difficult together, doing something kind of fun because you get the endorphins coming out. But it's walking up the stones and having a coffee and a chat afterwards. And that is a massive game changer. Just being able to open up a little bit. You know, you've done something horrible, especially if it's like December, January, you're cold, you're shaky, but you're in a good place with people to have those conversations. And I think more people need to create those spaces for guys. That aren't big, you know, chairs around in a circle and find things. For me, it's the Cold Water Collective and also jiu-jitsu as well. You know, it's amazing how vulnerable you are with a group of guys after you've tried to break each other's arms and choke each other out.
There's a really interesting theory behind psychological aging in men that by the time you hit your mid-40s, you obviously go through different stages and you realize there's a guy, this is probably where you're going to reach your peak in terms of you've gone past your physical goal or your career goal or whatever else. And most guys, when they're in their teens, 20s, think, well, in a couple of years, I'll be able to do X, Y, or Z, like play for England or I'll be running my own company or something. And then you have this realization. But like you said, you've then also got these dependents, and there's this whole big theory around this is this crunch point where you go, oh shit, I haven't achieved all this stuff and I'm never going to achieve this. And then most guys go through a period of hopefully realization or reflection, and they don't go buy a sports car or have an affair or worse. And then you come out the other side and then you actually see men in their 60s, 70s are happier, which is great, but it's a real worry group. I don't think we're very good at managing this still.
I spent a long time writing down, you know, 10 things really, and what we're talking about today, about why the things that you need to do at this age, you know, have those hobbies, have those selfish needs as well, and also understand that everything that you're feeling is perfectly normal. And I think this is the biggest thing when it comes to talking to other people. It's not necessarily the need to get things out, it's the need to understand that you're not the only person that feels this. And I think that's a super important thing. Good. That you know, suddenly like, oh, okay, so it's because, you know, my parents, you know, relying a lot more on me. I feel like I'm letting the team down. I feel all this burden, and sometimes I feel like it'd be easier if I'm not here. And like all of those thoughts, you know, when I've spoken to guys, I say, hands up, who has said that to themselves? 100% everyone. And they're like, thank God, I'm not the only person that feels like that. And I think sometimes that's exactly what you need to know, that you're not the only person who feels like that. You know, I speak to a lot of business owners, and one of the first things I say is, who here in the last month has wanted to burn their business down to the ground and start again? And it's 100%. And it's like, that is a normal feeling when you're trying to build something of value, of worth, because it's hard. But everything worth doing in life is hard. And I think it's one of these things of understanding, of going, yeah, it's fucking difficult. That's why the juice is worth the squeeze at the end of the day.
Do you think at 40 it's too hard to change men's habits or behaviors?
No, I don't. I think one of the things is that 40-year-olds are going to Instagram for advice that is being pushed out by 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
That's it. There's not enough 40-year-old men that are saying, slow down, don't go hard, go home. Think about your nervous system. Think about the fact that you do have a very busy job and 2 kids and it's about having different strategies for things. You might not be able to get to the gym 3 times a week, but everyone can do a 10-minute circuit 3 times a week. It's having those non-negotiables and standards.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I find it almost insulting that a 20-year-old buff guy who's probably on something he shouldn't be is telling me how I should be training.
Yeah.
If you have a guy who's watching this and he's thinking, I want to start, where's your first point? What would you say this is the first thing you need to do to start moving past that point of lethargy?
I think understand that you have these things, understand that it's going to be difficult. One of my favorite books is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And the reason I like it so much is he talks about keystone habits. And what a keystone habit essentially is something that helps all the other habits. So I look at this as kind of a domino. It's that first domino that when you push down, all the other dominoes go down. And what you need to do is find what that is. For most people, it can be as easy as getting 8 to 10,000 steps in a day. It's a goal, it's a focus, it's doable, and just focus on that. And what tends to happen with that is, the thing about getting more steps in is that you get outside a lot more. You get in your head a lot more. Your brain works much better when you're moving your feet. And you start to listen to some podcasts as well, like this podcast.
That's a good shout. Yeah.
And I used to call it my power walk. And people go, how fast do you walk? I'm like, no, the power isn't come from walking fast. Power comes from listening to podcasts whilst walking. And that was a game changer for me. So we get all the physical health, we get the mental health. And actually, there's this interesting thing that I talk about with ab belts. You remember those ab belts? Yeah. Now, they have studies that show that if you buy one of these, that the average person in 3 weeks loses up to 8 pounds. And this is a prime correlation, doesn't imply causation, because the reason that people lose weight is, if you're going to, back in the day, spend 100 quid on an electric ab belt, you're probably going to look after your diet a bit better. You're probably going to move a bit more, and you're probably going to exercise. So you probably will lose 8 pounds in 3 weeks, but it won't be the ab belt. It'll be everything that you're doing around it. The argument is, was that ab belt worth it?
Yeah.
Because if that was the thing that you needed to signal to yourself to make that change. And this is the way that I look at keystone habits, that steps might be the thing that gets you doing your push-ups. That steps might be the thing that, I'm not going to have a Mackie D's tonight. I'm going to actually cook something healthy. And this is this domino effect of just focusing on one thing. Now, when guys come to me, they go, right, I need to get my eight to 10 steps in. I need to get 3 gym sessions in. I need to do my breath work. I need to do my stretching. I need to do my cold plunges. I'll slow the fuck down. Let's focus on one at a time and understand this keystone habit.
That's difficult, because my next question was going to be, do you want to start an ab belt business with me? But, well, we can pass on that. Is there, it's a sort of a simple 20-minute routine you could give to a guy who wants to start training? Yeah,
it was actually one before I came here. So simple one. I have this app called Seconds Pro. I think Pro is because you pay £5 for the app, but you can get it for free. I am not an investor. I don't even know if it exists anymore. I've had it on my phone for so long. But all I do is I have 5 little stations in there, and I look at, right, okay, full body. So I want to focus on something that works my chest, my shoulders. I want to do a cardio element and maybe a core element. I'll put that in 45 seconds, 8 seconds between each one, so you can change to the different exercise. 5 rounds. It takes 22 minutes. It's great for any person to do, because you can swap those exercises around depending on where you are. Say you're in a hotel room or that, you just need some bands, maybe a TRX, and you can get to work. And it's very, very simple, because all you need is the thing that's in your pocket and 22 minutes. Yeah, so that would be my go-to.
Does it matter if you're not a morning trainer?
Not at all. I'm very much a morning person. I had a paper round at 14. I joined the army, so I'm definitely unfortunately have to be a morning person. And for me, that morning is, and having 2 kids, it's very quiet in the mornings. But my wife is a night owl, so I go to bed at 9 because I do get up early. She goes to bed about 11, 12, but she's a photographer, so she does all her editing in the evening. So I go to bed, and then she gets the same quiet house that I do in the mornings. So I don't think that you need to, get up and 5 a.m. club and all of this stuff if you're not a 5 a.m. person. You just need to have at least 30 minutes to an hour of time to yourself each day. And if you do have kids like myself, that's either going to be very early in the morning or a little bit later at night.
Or you sneak out of work.
Yeah, you sneak out of work, yeah.
I don't do that. We'll get back to Jay very soon, but I want to ask you something first. Jay has spoken about obstacles stopping most men from getting and staying fit. I want you to comment below any obstacles or challenges that you'll face, and we'll be hoping to cover them in upcoming episodes. Back to Jay. What's an ideal morning and evening routine for someone in their 40s like?
It's always going to be dependent on how much time that you can give it. For me, an ideal routine is probably a couple of hours in a perfect, glorified clouds floating situation.
And you have this?
Or? No, unfortunately not. Hence what people think. I get up at 4:30. I get up at 4:30, and they're like, "Oh man, you're like hardcore." Like, no. My son gets up at about 6, and if he hears me, if I put my volume too loud on my stretching, he'll come down earlier. So it's just like, it's more tactical than actually anything. But for me, it's having a little bit of time for yourself to reflect, to move, to, I always say like stretch, sweat, scribe. 3 S's. Take a bit of time to stretch. That can be 25 minutes. That could be 3 minutes. Take a little bit of time to write down your thoughts, whether that is what you plan to do on the day, whether that is any kind of reflection. That's the scribe part, and the sweat part. I did a summer survival challenge last year. And it was basically doing a set of exercises for 5 minutes each and every day. And people come to me saying, I've had DOMs in my muscles, I've had anything. If I knew that that's all you need to get a good workout, and it's like, yeah, it's just you have, the lower the time, the higher the intensity. It's amazing how difficult 5 minutes of burpees is.
5 minutes of burpees?
Yeah, that's horrible.
So I guess the take home question would be, if you're a guy over 40 and they want to take something from this podcast, what's the one thing you'd want someone to do?
Know yourself. Take a little bit of time to reflect on your life. And that can be very, very hard to do, because like you said, when we had this, the first part of the conversation, people don't want to know that they haven't achieved everything that they said they wanted to at 20, and ignorance is bliss. But actually, as painful as it can be, what you have done is you've written down where, the things that have worked, the things that haven't, and where it is that you want to be. And that's where everything starts. Being honest with yourself and knowing what it is that you've messed up and what it is that you genuinely care about improving. And I'd say 100% of people over the age of 40 want to feel better, want to feel healthier, want to feel happier, want to feel more focused, want to feel more energetic. And that comes down to writing down the things that you're not doing that's stopping you from that.
Cold plunges?
Cold plunges can definitely help. A cold shower can definitely help. There is a time and a place for them. I'm massive advocate for cold therapy. One of the main reasons is most people, including myself, really struggle with mindfulness of, being quiet and being in our heads, or trying to have a thought and allow it to pass without thinking, which is essentially mindfulness. If you jump in cold water, you don't think of anything, and all you do is focus on your breath. It's kind of extreme meditation.
I bet it is, yeah.
And there's a great quote by a guy called Naval Ravikant. And he said, people want peace from minds, not peace of mind. And it's having things in your day that take you out of your head. For me, there's a few things. It's virtual table tennis on the Meta Quest. It's jiu-jitsu, and it's cold therapy.
Nice. I want to get a blood test if you're over 40.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Jay, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It's been brilliant to have you on Man Alive. If somebody wanted to follow you, where do they need to go?
Instagram's probably the best, but any platform on social media at Jay Alderton.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thanks so much for watching this episode of Man Alive. I'm sure you had a mate, colleague, or family member you thought of at least once while watching this who would benefit from Jay's advice. Share this episode with just one person and let's grow together. See you next time.